Howdy, with this video, I want to introduce you to the class, go over the syllabus very quickly, go over D2L a little bit, and maybe some of the major ideas we're going to cover throughout the semester. This is a Comp 2 class, an honors class on the internet, which presents some challenges. But one of the two main things you got to know is to, one, make sure if there's a problem, you let me know as soon as possible. We want to keep small problems small, right? The other one is to make sure you're backing up all your work. If your kid gets into your Google Docs and deletes everything, that's your problem, especially if you're about to submit an essay and all of a sudden it's no longer there. Make sure you have your stuff in more than one location. Make sure you're communicating. If you don't understand something, you got to let me know. I can't see through the internet and look at your face and see, the confused look after one of my brilliant lectures. So be sure to let me know if you don't understand something or if you can't find something. Quite often it's a mistake I've made. So, like I said, watch this video, then I forget to post it in D2L or something. We're all human beings, so communication's key for an internet class. Even if you think it's a silly question, it might be a silly question, but it's important that you know the information, not that we rate questions from 1 to 5 or something. But we're going to mainly be in D2L. A lot of you probably going through My Northeast State to get into D2L. D2L is on its own server, so if you go to this elearn.northeaststate.edu, you can still get into D2L even if the Northeast State website's down, which sometimes happens, particularly on the weekends, usually towards when something major's coming due, right? But there's different ways to access D2L. If you ever need to come see me on campus, I have an office there. I'll post my office hours once I know what they are. I don't quite know that yet. Calling me is kind of the worst way to get in contact with me. If you need to, that's fine. Uh, but I'm not in my office a lot. I'm doing dual enrollment. I'm doing internet classes. I'm all over the place. So I'm not sitting in my office waiting for phone calls or anything. But if you do want to leave a message, I'll get back to you. This is Comp 2. It's a writing course, obviously, but we're going to be focused about writing on literature and probably more importantly, the ideas behind the literature. We're not just going to do plot summary or book reports. We're going to talk about some of the ideas the authors are bringing up and what's happening while that writer's writing and things like that. You can read the course objectives, but basically it's learning to write better, right? Using evidence, particularly, can't just go like, well, that short story sucked. I'm going to ask people, well, why do you think it sucked? And maybe you offer a pretty good argument saying, yeah, okay, I have to go like, okay, that's a pretty good argument for why it sucks. But generally, we're reading some fairly famous stuff that hopefully won't lead you in that direction. We'll see. I cover the textbooks in YouTube video number 2 in detail, but you do need the Norton Introduction to Literature. You also need a copy of The Giver. You might have read that in high school or junior high school. And you also need to choose one of those graphic novels or comic books. I remember the first time I took a graphic novel class, I thought it was going to be like lots of violence and stuff. And all of a sudden I'm looking at, things like that. And I'm like, oh, it's a comic book. And that's what we're going to work with. So, and I talk about that a lot more in video number 2. But you're only going to pick one of these. And if you want to look at them before you purchase them, and or make your decision, you can come by my office. A few of these are already in the library. A couple aren't. For the grading breakdown, I'm going to go to page 9 here. Get through all this. I'll make it a little smaller, actually. I'm going to do 5 major essays, but they're going to be mostly shorter essays. We're not going to do the 2,500 word kind of thing. I found that generally shorter essays on a variety of topics help students learn to write better than big monolith essays where they're kind of half plagiarizing, half kind of making it up as they go. And they're all going to be quite different, actually. The first one's going to be on fiction. We're going to put fiction in historical context, mainly to learn vocabulary and things like that. It's hard to talk about postmodernism if you don't know what modernism is. Then modernism is a response to this and that, and if you don't know those terms. So a lot of it's going to be terms and working with the fiction that way. The second one's going to be a poetry explication, just you and a poem, going at it. And that explication is a line-by-line analysis of a poem. It's an excellent sentence structure and critical thinking exercises. Students may not feel that way while they're writing, but it's a very interesting experience, actually. The third one is going to be based on the graphic novel you choose. Probably the big question is going to be, as a graphic novel, literature. It relies on both images and language to communicate its ideas, and does that function as literature, or is it kind of in a separate category? Gets to be a very interesting question, and you'll be able to use the one you choose to get into some of those ideas. Essay number 4, we're going to be working with The Giver. One, we're going to read the book. It's a short novel, a very short novel, actually. And Northeast State Theater Department's also doing a production of it this season, and first weekend in April. And we're probably going to watch the movie version as well and compare those 3 genres and see how they develop ideas differently, maybe which ones are working, have certain special techniques they can use that other ones can't. A lot of it's going to be about genre and some of the big ideas behind literature. Essay number 5, we're going to finish with a little drama. We're going to read A Doll's House. Fascinating play, probably pulling together a lot of these dystopian ideas, these anti-utopian ideas with all our works. Along the way, we're going to be doing response papers. Those are going to vary as we go along. The first one's your syllabus quiz, which we'll talk about here in a second. I'm not a huge fan of discussion boards. We might do 1 or 2 discussion boards. We'll see how it goes. A lot of these are going to be response papers where we're going to be working on the finer points of MLA formatting in terms of literature and things like that. But we'll figure out a way for everybody to share their ideas and interact online. For the final exam, you do have the option of going to the International Education's Washington, D.C. trip instead of doing the final exam. I detail that in the video number 2. That's totally optional. Watching The Giver the first weekend of April is not, but this trip is, because people have kids and all kinds of things going on. They may not be able to go, and I understand that. If you can't go, you'll just do the final exam, which is which is fine, I guess. Add them all up, you get 1,030 points. That means there's 30 bonus points in the class. 90% is an A, 80% is B, 70% is C, based on the 1,000-point scale. So people ask the rest of credit, and I'm like, it's already built in. That's all we're going to do there. Going back up. Hope I'm not making you dizzy there. Again, you're going to see boxed and bold and underlined. Let me know when you have problems. If you just disappear in the class for 2-3 weeks, I don't know what's happening. I assume you're just not coming back. So even if it's a short email in D2L, make sure you let me know what's going on. And I don't need to know the details of your life, but let me know you're still in the class and wanting to continue. And again, saving your work. Don't throw out grades into any graded work till you're done. Don't go in D2L and delete it once I send it back to you. That's silly. There's no reason to ever do that. If I die in a fiery car crash the day before grades are due, can you prove you took the class? That's kind of the example I always tend to give. I'm going to try not to die in a fiery car crash, but things happen. If I hit the lottery and I'm worth $1 billion all of a sudden, I may not be interested in grading the rest of your work. Knowing me, I probably would anyway. But anyway, but just cover your rear end. Make sure you're backing up the work you're working on. Don't delete things until you get the final grade for the semester. The rest of this you can kind of read through. Again, when we look at the schedule, assignments are going to be due on a Tuesday night or a Friday night. I like to break it up 2 days a week. Otherwise, students just kind of turn in sloppy work if it's only once a week. They wait till that last night, which is probably what I would do, and then they try and rush it in, and it's just rushed and hurried and not very good. So want to kind of keep everybody's focus in on the class by doing that every Tuesday and Friday. May not be a ton of things going on every single day, but want to make sure we're still in contact with the class. The rest you can kind of read for yourself. You're going to see some of these are Northeast State policies, which may not even apply to our class. Email policy, make sure you ask a question if you have one. Don't just email me, this essay is hard. I'll just email you back like, yeah, some students tend to think it's hard. Well, you didn't, you're going to be like, well, that wasn't helpful. I'm like, well, you didn't ask a question. I don't even know what you want from me. So make sure you ask questions. Try and be as clear as you can. Sometimes in internet classes, you can feel very lost, and I'll try and, talk you through it or email you through it, but try and be as precise as you can. And I'm not going to grade your email or anything like that, but try and write fairly decent English. Yeah, if you're not offended a couple of times in this class, you're just not doing the reading. So something's going to clash with your ideas, and that's pretty normal. That's one of the functions of literature. It kind of pokes at us a little bit, and makes us upset sometimes, and got to go in there and figure out, what happened or why do I react that way. I can't drop you from the class if you just quit participating. I keep putting zeros in. If you don't drop the class or fill out that paperwork, you're going to get a F at the end of the semester, right? And that's true of any class. Your instructor could not drop you. Shouldn't be canceling class. It's an internet class, so no reason to think that snow would matter much. If we get the ice storm of the century, we'll have to deal with that when that happens. But hopefully nothing like that will happen. If you plagiarize, you'll fail. We're going to go over that with MLA formatting quite a bit. By the time we get to these essays, you should kind of know what plagiarism looks like. The rest you can read for yourself. Some of this won't make sense. Like, we're not meeting as a class, so I don't know. I'm not even sure why I kept the emergency statement in there. Except I think they've kind of make us do that. On page 6, you're going to see the class schedule for the semester. I'm going to keep adding to this as we go. I didn't label every single possible YouTube video I might put up there. In fact, when we get to D2L, you're going to see there's going to be 6 up there by the time you get into the course. But when something says do, it's due that day. For example, response number 1, the syllabus quiz is due Tuesday. Obviously, that's a little quick. I'm probably going to email you and say, well, Wednesday's fine. Don't worry about it too much. But then the second one's going to be due Friday. And you kind of see, particularly with the fiction, we're going to be kind of focused on responses. That might take different forms. Some might be more fun than others. But we want to make sure you're understanding MLA formatting, how to use quotes to support what you're saying, and all that kind of good stuff. I also want to see what you're saying about the essay. My guess is we'll do at least one discussion board somewhere in there to see what everybody else is thinking. Then we'll get to the first essay on fiction. Generally, I try to give you at least 2 weekends to work on an essay. More than that, students just tend to procrastinate. So does the professor sometimes. It's like, well, I don't have to worry about it. They're not turning that in for 3 weeks. And we don't want to do that. We want to kind of stay focused, kind of moving. Hopefully not too fast. Don't want to be a bunch of stress monkeys. But then we're going to move on to poetry. Fairly short section. And again, we're going to be doing the explication there. Sometimes you'll see nothing due. That just means you're working on the essay, or you might be waiting on me to get that essay back to you or something like that. After spring break or over spring break, probably going to be reading that graphic novel. So you have a little while to choose which one you want to work with. You don't have to know that right away. Or you can come by the office and look at them and see which one you want to work with. But we'll do a response on the graphic novel, then we'll do the essay on it. Again, nothing's really going to be due on that Friday the 20th. That's when the Washington, D.C. trip is. Hopefully some of you will go. Again, it's not required, but I'm hoping some of you kind of like, that sounds like fun. I get to go to Washington, D.C., see all this stuff, and that counts as my final exam. But it's an awesome experience. They generally go to the Holocaust Museum, the Museum of the American Indian, an art museum, and usually something else. If a few of you tend to want to go as a class, we'll probably end up also going to maybe the Library of Congress. After talking about all this literature, it'd be neat to see a Gutenberg Bible in person, the beginning of the printing press, and that kind of technological revolution that just changed the world. We can look at the beginning of it. It'd be so cool. But anyway, again, I understand that not everybody could do that, but cover that a little bit more in the second video. After the graphic novel essay, we're going to work with the giver. Make sure you're putting this on your calendar. Got almost a 4-month warning here. You have to go watch this play because that's what Left Fourth Ethics is going to be based on. If you don't watch it, you can't do the essay, and I don't have a backup plan. I'm not going to ask Northeast State Theater to do a special performance just for you, right? And again, hopefully trying to get at least 2 weekends for each essay. Then we'll get into a dollhouse a little bit, full-length 3-act play. Very interesting play. It's going to be interesting to tie that into some of the other things we've read. That's a dystopic kind of play, or dystopian kind of play, but it's a lot more subtle than maybe something like The Giver, which is kind of beats you over the head with things a little bit. And again, if you go on the DC trip on the 28th, you're done. If you're not able to go on the trip, Not something to really worry about, but you do have to do the final exam for those 150 points. But that's the schedule. You can kind of see it kind of moves on at a pretty steady pace. If you're thinking, I wonder if anything's due this Tuesday or Friday, the answer is yes, probably, right? Especially at the beginning of this, up to spring break. But it's doable, and hopefully it's going to be kind of interesting. We get to look at literature in very different ways, and kind of think about how we feel about literature and art and the humanities. This is a humanities course. We're humanists in this course, so looking at what human beings think and feel uh, through the literature. Want to go to D2L real quick. With this class, I'm kind of assuming you know how to use D2L. If you don't, let me know. I got training videos on that as well. But most material is going to be on the content page. If you don't see like where's the syllabus, the last section I was in was help resources, so make sure you go back up to table of contents over here. And now push it up there. Let me get in as a student so we're seeing the same thing. So we're on the content page. There's a copy of the syllabus. There's a syllabus quiz. The syllabus quiz is also a response paper, so it's going to be under responses. As opposed to YouTube videos, I'm going to keep doing those. Some of them are kind of long, like this one's probably one of the longest ones I'm ever going to do for the class. I'll try to keep them, the rest of them, at least under 10, 12 minutes. After that, you're starting to wonder, I wonder what's going on somewhere else on the internet. This is, that would be my reaction at least. Others is going to be kind of short. How to do the syllabus quiz probably can't be more than a 3 or 4 minute video. Same thing with creating documents. Some of the stuff you might already know how to do if you had an internet class before. Some people may not, so I include them on there. But you definitely want to watch the first 3 because they're going to cover things you may not be familiar with. We're going to build the responses as we go. I'll post response number 2 probably Monday. Response number 1 is due Tuesday. When it says there's a D2L link on there, it's under here under readings and viewings. And of course, there's going to be some help resources. There's an MLA lecture. Some of you may have taken Comp 1 a couple of years ago or something. Might need to refresh yourself on that, maybe a little more detail than the video covers. And we'll go over some of this stuff as we go through the class. Grades will be under grades. This is the official grade book for the course. If something looks wrong on there, let me know. And it's very easy for me to make a mistake. Let me get out of being a student. This is what it looks like on my side. Just a bunch of boxes. And it's very easy to get the wrong grade in the wrong box accidentally or something like that. Especially if your name sounds like somebody else's, or maybe I'm just tired that day or whatever. So if something looks wrong in your grade book, be sure and let me know as soon as possible, and I'll be happy to fix it. Don't be shy about sending an email like the paper you sent back said I had a 19 out of 20, but the D2L says 15 out of 20. Well, I did something wrong there, right? Just let me know. Discussions will be here. I don't think there's an example up there. I'm not a huge fan of discussions board, but it's kind of fun to see what other people are thinking at certain points in the semester. So we'll probably do a couple for responses. And assignments, over here is where you're going to submit material. Again, the videos are up there to show you how to do that if you're not familiar with D2L. But as you kind of think about the class, we're going to cover 2 major ideas. I want to kind of go over those real quickly because sometimes when you're offended or upset by a reading, it's probably because it's one of these 2 philosophical questions are coming into play, and the way you feel about them may not be the way the writer's talking about them, right? Which can create a little friction. First question we're going to get into is this essentialism versus anti-essentialism, and we're going to talk about this. Whoops. No, I've done it. How do you go back? There we go. Basically, it's a question of whether there's truth out there, or is everything just relative? Is there reality, or do we all just walk around with our own perceptions, trying to figure out the world through our own filters? It's going to be a very powerful question. Some of our first readings, like the Puritans, are going to say truth comes directly from the Bible. You got to study the Bible and know the Bible to understand what truth is. Then the Enlightenment folks that follow them are going to be thinking no, truth comes through science and experience. I only trust what I can prove through science, not metaphysical ideas that might be presented by the Puritans and their interpretations of the Bible. But this is a question societies deal with all the time, and every society deals with it in different ways. Uh, Sorry, you can tell I'm not good with PowerPoint. I'll keep my hands off the clicker. But do you come to college to get knowledge, or do you come to college to get indoctrinated in a certain way and pick up certain biases? Are there moral absolutes, or does morality depend on the context? When we get into the realist writers, they're going to start playing with this a little bit. We all think we have these moral absolutes, these things we won't do. But what happens if our biological needs aren't met? If we don't have food, sometimes our morality might suffer. And is it okay to steal food when you're starving, or steal food for your children when you see them starving? They're going to get into some of these questions, especially if you're caught up in these situations that you don't have any control over. Excuse me. What happens to these moral absolutes? Um, and you kind of see some of these questions, like with to an essentialist, history teaches us facts, knowledge about the past. To an anti-essentialist, they're going to say, well, history's a story. It's often his story, right? If white guys write history, then we're probably going to write about dead white guys for the most part, or at least that's been some of the theories tossed out. When we write about history, we bring our biases, our perceptions, what we've been told before, which may or may not be true. So history might be his story. It might be more of the creation of a narrative than a direct representation of what happened in the past. Same thing with something like journalism. Do journalists report facts, or do they create stories and narratives? Um, and we can kind of see this battle within our culture, all the time. Even if you believe in truth, you still have a lot of work to do. Where does that truth come from? Uh, if you're a person of faith, it might come from a religious text, but who gets to interpret that text? Whose interpretation seems to dominate for whatever reason? Uh, why do they choose that particular interpretation? One of the when people of other religions talk about the Bible, they comment that how you got one book that's supposed to have all this truth. How come you all are fighting about it all the time? Why can't you agree on how to interpret it? Does truth come through experience, through science, through this inner voice within us? We've got a lot of work to do there. We're going to see the various writers talking about this and working with these ideas. And again, they're invariably going to clash with yours, and that's normal. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means we're going to examine these ideas in different ways. The other big question we're going to work with is this question of whether we have free will. Do we make decisions and our lives end up turning out based on a certain way based on those decisions? Or are we victims of determinism or agents of determinism? Is our free will limited by things like genetics, class, race, biology? I'm not choosing to get old, but it's happening to me whether I want to or not. There's a certain biological determinism in how we age, right? I can't do everything I could when I was 21. If you only have a certain amount of money in terms of your class, you're probably limited on things you can do. My children are limited by the amount of money I make. They're probably not going to Harvard or Oxford or something like that. I don't have money to send them there. Um, they're the children of an English teacher, right? So how much money you have limits some of the decisions you can make. And you can just keep going. If you're born female, does the world see you a certain way? If you're born a certain race, does the world see you a certain way? We have biological needs, sex, food, uh, uh, water. We have to have all these things to live. And if we don't get those kind of determine a little bit of how we're going to behave. If you're born in America, you have certain expectations that would, inherent within our culture that when we go somewhere else, they're kind of like, why do you do that? I'm like, I don't know. I was just brought up that way, right? So how much choice do we really have is kind of the question there. And again, you can kind of already see how writers and how our culture, we kind of fight about this quite a bit. And sometimes it fluxes, right? Sometimes you feel like I'm making good choices and good things are happening because of those good choices, and other times you're like, I'm just fighting. I'm got a sword fighting against the wind here, right? Um, but when we start getting these two ideas going together, you can see how the authors are going to have a lot of fun with this. They're going to irritate you sometimes, or you're going to sometimes you're going to like, wow, I never heard anybody reflect what I'm thinking like that. Um, so kind of an interesting class. We're not going to answer these questions. We're going to examine these questions, right? 3,000 years from now, there's still people on the planet. They're going to be looking at these questions just like we are. It's just part of being a human being. I think that's about it. Let me get back to the syllabus here. So kind of a lot to think about there. But again, this is what we're going to be doing all semester long. Um, and like I said, a lot of us just examining these various ideas. We may not come up with perfect answers. In fact, I doubt we will. Um, but hopefully it's going to be kind of fun and interesting. Maybe even a little exciting at times. But if you have questions, that's the big thing. You got to let me know. Losing my voice. You got to let me know if there's a problem. Otherwise, I can't help you, right? Or if you're confused about any part of the course, be sure to let me know. That's the biggest thing about internet courses. You can't just sit there staring at your screen wondering, what's going on. So like I said, this is probably the longest video we'll have this semester, but it's kind of a lot to cover there. Be sure to let me know if you have any questions, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.